So, the 18GB demo download for Forza Motorsport 7 dropped yesterday. Yesterday, of course, in comparison to the day that I released this video. And so, I wanted to make a quick review, my initial thoughts, and an overall experience of the demo for those who maybe haven't downloaded it. Maybe you don't have the memory space. Incidentally, if you don't have the space for the demo, you're going to struggle with the full game, that's for sure. But maybe you haven't had the chance. Maybe you're waiting to get an Xbox One to see what it's like. Some people maybe. So overall, what did I think of it? How does it compare, for instance, to other Forza games like 6, 5, maybe even the Horizon games, but also potentially to some of its rivals? In particular on this channel, for those who don't know, I produce content for both Forza and Gran Turismo, and I like to blur the lines between the two communities, because they are both genuinely brilliant. So, comparing this to the beta version of Gran Turismo Sport could be an interesting comparison, and also one which you won't necessarily get from many other channels. So what are my thoughts on Forza 7, at least in demo form? Well, first of all, let's break down the obvious stuff. Graphics, car sounds, and of course car selection to some degree, although you only get 3 to work with. Those are things which you always expect to be good from a Forza game. The graphics are getting so good on car games these days that you literally have to do side-by-side comparisons to appreciate the best things about them. Sometimes even side-by-side comparisons to real life. That is the point that we are at in gaming. And of course you want it to keep getting better, but at a certain point you could quite justifiably say that you don't really notice a huge difference anymore. For me personally, Forza 6 already looks so good in terms of the reflections, the lighting, the crispness of the cars, especially the interiors with the details, the dusty dashboards, sometimes dirt on the windshield, the sun shining in with the reflections on the dash. All of that stuff was already so good that seeing a difference with this demo, especially on the same console, isn't necessarily going to be immediately apparent. Maybe it will for some people, but not for me personally. The graphics, though, are fantastic. Of course they are, and in particular the weather graphics such as wet rain on the road. Well, of course you're not going to have dry rain, are you? But also things such as reflections, the lighting, not just of the car but of the background, the sky, that kind of thing. It looks great even in demo form, and this is only 18 gig in comparison to 100 gig from the full game. And although it's not a beta, it's going to be a little bit closer to the full game than a beta would be, it's still a great indication of how good the full game is going to look. As far as the car selection, as I said, we only have 3. You've got a GT500 class Nissan GTR, you've got the tank pool racing Mercedes truck, which I absolutely love, and also the new and exclusive Porsche 911 GT2 RS, which of course you get in toy form as well, or model car form, with the Ultimate Edition of the game. I've pre-ordered that version, so I'm going to get that little toy and a couple of other things as well, which is all well and good. So a lot of people probably want to know what that car is like in particular, since the other two have already been available. Well, I have to say, I'm not that impressed. I'm not a Porsche fan in general anyway, and it's funny that at the moment with both Gran Turismo Sport and the Forza franchise in general, people are really getting hyped for Porsches coming back or being featured more predominantly. That's great. I don't dislike Porsche, I have a huge amount of respect for them, and there are some which I love, like the Carrera GT. However, I don't go out of my mind for every new variation of the 911. This car is an interesting one. It certainly handles differently to how you may typically expect something like a 911 Turbo, for instance, to drive with the all-wheel drive advantage. This one, though, feels certainly more hardcore, but it was this car that I started my experience on the demo with, and I immediately noted the difference in physics, and that is of course something that a lot of people will want to know about. So, what were the differences with the physics? Well, it was different with all 3 cars. That is to be very strongly noted, and I'm glad that it's different with the 3 cars, not just because you'd obviously want them to feel different, but because if this was the only car in the demo, I think I might be worried. Now, that's not to say it's a bad handling car, not at all, but on the Dubai circuit with this particular vehicle, even using the same driving settings as I did with the other 2 cars and the same driving style essentially, it felt considerably different to both Forza 5 and 6, of course totally different to the Horizon games, and actually reminded me once again very similarly of Gran Turismo Sport in some ways, at least the beta version. The physics aren't the same, but they are definitely getting more similar to each other. Gran Turismo kind of made the cars heavier. They aren't necessarily wallowy, but you can certainly feel the displacement of weight through corners, under braking, more than we ever have before. And likewise in Forza 7, you can feel the weight of the car much, much more. You could feel that to some degree on Forza 6 as well, but that is definitely far more apparent on this demo version of Forza 7. In particular, funnily enough, with the Porsche, I would have thought that it would be with the Mercedes truck that you'd see that kind of weight difference, but actually, I have to say the truck handles really well. But maybe that's just me, I'm weird like that. I love driving big, cumbersome vehicles, and I'm generally better with those than with a faster, lighter car. And I think that was an issue with the Porsche. Going straight into the beta, you're going to make some mistakes, you're going to crash, and I certainly did. But at the same time, don't get me wrong, I didn't dislike driving the Porsche. The drifting was very fun in it, although that wasn't exactly the point of the race. And I've always loved the drift physics of Forza far more than that of Gran Turismo. And I'm not hating on Gran Turismo, I just love the series for different reasons. In Forza 7, at least the demo form, drifting is going to please a lot of people in terms of the physics. It's not necessarily more difficult to drift, but it's a little less arcadish than it has been in the past. And so people who love that style of drifting, the more technical style, will probably enjoy that, because this Porsche wasn't even set up to drift, and it was still very good at it. It was easy to drive to some degree, but at the same time you could tell that to get the best drifts out of it, you'd need to put some time in, upgrade it in a slightly different way, tune it in a different way, that kind of stuff. So I think drifters are going to be happy with this. As far as the overall experience of driving the Porsche though, I wasn't all that impressed. The weight doesn't feel great on the car. It kind of swings around a lot through corners, and I don't mean in just a general rear-wheel drive way, I mean it feels cumbersome. The brakes don't feel great. You have to brake way before corners, which is fairly realistic of course, but at the same time in the other two cars you don't have to brake that early. And of course they are both racing vehicles and this one isn't, but at the same time you'd expect a Porsche to brake a little bit better than a truck. And it doesn't. The truck is significantly better at slowing down for corners, which is kind of strange. As far as the GT500 Nissan goes, well of course, you'd expect that to be a far better performance machine through the corners, and they kind of tempered that aspect of the demo by giving you bad weather to deal with. The weather of course gives people an opportunity to experience that aspect of how Forza 7 is potentially going to be different from Forza 6 or 5 or Horizon. And that was good. The three different cars give you three distinctly different aspects of the way the cars are going to perform, the way they have different personalities, the way the physics work in different ways. The Porsche, for instance, felt the heaviest of the three and in some ways the most cumbersome. The truck felt fantastic. I love driving it. It got my easiest race win of the three by far. And the Nissan, of course, was tempered by the inclement weather. You couldn't fully tell its potential, but it felt good. And the weather aspects of the game are something which are relatively new to Forza. It's been around for a little bit, but it's still relatively new, and it's nice to see how quickly they're progressing in terms of weather physics and also just the appearance of it. I may be in the select few that loves the look of rain in a game. There's something about when it's done well, not just raining but water on the track, and Forza 6 as well did it very well in as much as if you hit a puddle on the road you could tell a difference, you would lose traction. Likewise with this demo, you do the exact same thing. Driving the car in inclement weather takes not necessarily a huge amount of skill, but of course it takes more than in dry weather. You have to temper the throttle a little bit more, take your time, and of course when the AI makes some mistakes that always helps out a lot as well. As far as the car sounds go, they're very distinct, and although you'd of course hope that they would be, I think that they feel a little bit better than Forza 6. Forza 6 didn't sound bad, not at all, and neither did Forza 5, but some of the cars will sometimes sound very similar, and although these three vehicles are of course different, they each sound crisp, and they sound very different, and this is probably my favourite aspect of it, from the cockpit. You want the cars to sound different, you don't just want a slightly more muffled version of the outside noise, which is what some games are inclined to do. On this occasion that is not the case, especially with the Mercedes truck. I loved the difference in the sounds from within the cockpit. You could hear the creaking of the truck as you brake, as it's stressing the chassis and the frame through corners. You can hear the turbo. It's all great to hear that kind of stuff. It adds to the immersion. And of course, with a great sound system, that will just improve that exponentially. As far as the Nissan goes, well, you've got the kind of sounds that you'd expect, that more mechanical, straight-cut gear style, although with the truck, you're probably running the same setup, I should think, although you can't really hear it over the sound of the diesel engine. And with the Porsche, it sounds pretty good, better than I was expecting it to be. Porsches typically sound a little bit muffled in production form. This one's got a little bit more of a raspy sound to it, which is nice. And overall, the car sounds, at least from these three, which of course is a very limited window into the look of the game, was pretty cool. I liked it. So overall, this is a demo which I would recommend checking out if you have an Xbox One, and of course it doesn't cost anything, so you might as well do it. It didn't take me too long to download it either, but obviously that's dependent on your personal internet speed. And as far as looking forward to Forza 7, I was already planning, pretty much no matter what, to cover Forza 7 in both car reviews and car tunes in October, when the game is released, alongside Gran Turismo Sport, if and when that is released later on in October. So that's still the case. That was pretty much never going to change. However, I'm definitely more excited for it to come out. Some cars more than others, certainly. But nonetheless, it's a good demo. It shows you what you need to know about the game in a concise, easy-to-see package, and the menu, as a slight side point, was pretty nice to work with as well. I'm not sure how much that will reflect into the full game, but I like the new style. I didn't really love the menu layout of either Forza 5 or 6, to be honest. It felt, to me, a little bit emotionless. And I know I'm probably in the minority there, but it felt very clinical to me, whereas this one, it's got more sass to it. It's got more attitude, and the avatars of the drivers with the suits that they have, and just the whole music layout, the menu layout, everything appears to have more character. And I like that. I really want that from a game, and that was kind of disappointing to me in Forza 6 in particular, because I played 5 after 6. And I'd always loved the fact that Forza, in comparison to Gran Turismo, had a more happy-go-lucky feel to it. Not arcade, not fully anyway, but definitely more geared towards fun than just being as realistic as possible. This returns a little bit more to that look. Not necessarily for the physics, they're still trying to keep it realistic in that way, but fun. But for the visual style and the audio style in particular, it definitely feels like they're going more back in that direction. And I think some of that may be influenced by how successful Horizon 3 has been and how fun that game is. I love Horizon 3, it's one of my favourite Forza games, and I like to see that style of game making and the style of laying out the game applied to this one. It gives it more character, as I said, more style as well. And so overall, I guess that's pretty much it for my initial thoughts and my review of the Forza 7 demo. As I said, you can still check it out on the storefront, or on the Xbox storefront, I guess. And if you want to check out more reviews for Forza 7, and of course when it's released, I'm going to be doing a ton of tune setups, a ton of gameplay stuff, a ton of review stuff. So of course you can check in to see that again when it's come out, or you can sub down below to see it before everyone else. But either way, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time. And for now, as always, thanks for watching.